General Hospital will reveal. In the high-stakes legal war raging in Port Charles, Carly found herself at the center of a battle that would test her resilience, intelligence, and her unyielding commitment to protect her family. With Wiley and Amelia's futures on the line, Carly was determined to fight for their safety and well-being, even if it meant going to extremes. What had once been a fragile truce between Carly and Nina quickly collapsed when a truth so dark and treacherous came to light that it could no longer be ignored or contained. Carly, ever the strategist, soon discovered the depth of Nina's betrayal. Nina had worked with Jacinda to secretly drug Drew with ketamine, intending to create chaos in his life. But it wasn't just a matter of drugs. Nina had gone a step further, hiring Jacinda to stage a wild, disorienting night for Drew, manipulating him into a compromising situation that would tarnish his reputation and threaten everything Carly and Michael had fought for. The scandal, with its far-reaching consequences, had the potential to ruin Drew completely and to destroy Michael's chances of winning custody of his children. For Carly, this wasn't just an attack on Drew, it was an attack on her entire family. As Carly processed this revelation, her mind raced, and her instincts kicked into overdrive. She knew she couldn't allow this to slide. Carly was no stranger to battle, but this was personal. This was her family's future hanging in the balance. Drew was no longer just a pawn in a game between two rivals, he was a casualty of Nina's malicious designs. But Carly wasn't about to let him, or Michael, become collateral damage in Nina's quest for power. Carly didn't just have the knowledge of what had transpired, she had the tools to stop it, and she wasn't about to let Nina's treachery go unpunished. With the evidence of Nina's involvement now within her grasp, Carly realized that she had to strike fast and hard. She couldn't afford to wait. The stakes were far too high, and every moment counted. Using her formidable influence and her sharp ability to read people, Carly made a calculated decision. She would confront Nina, but not before making sure that the confrontation would have maximum impact. Carly had meticulously gathered damning proof of Nina's scheme, a trail of evidence that, when exposed, would leave Nina with nowhere to hide. She knew that, when the time came, Nina would be forced to face the consequences of her actions. Carly's instincts told her that this was the turning point in the battle. If she could expose Nina's deceit in front of the right people, she could crush the threat once and for all. When the moment finally arrived, Carly entered the fray with a confidence that only comes from knowing the truth is on your side. She held nothing back, unleashing the full force of her fury in a display of raw emotion and unflinching resolve. She didn't just present the evidence, she made sure that Nina felt the full weight of her betrayal. Carly's words cut through the air like a blade, each accusation more damning than the last. The tension in the room was palpable, a simmering cauldron of anger, distrust, and fear. Carly's eyes locked onto Nina's, and in that moment, it was clear, Nina was no longer in control. The carefully crafted web of lies and manipulation she had woven was unraveling before her very eyes, and Carly was the one wielding the scissors to cut it all apart. The confrontation reached its boiling point in the courtroom. The once civilized atmosphere of a legal proceeding now felt like the setting of a battlefield. Carly's accusations were relentless, and Nina, cornered by the undeniable evidence, could do nothing but flounder. The tension between the two women had reached a fever pitch, each word exchanged now carrying the weight of years of animosity and conflict. Carly wasn't just trying to win the case, she was fighting for her family's survival. She was fighting for the children she loved, and she wasn't about to let Nina's deceitful schemes destroy everything she held dear. But Carly didn't stop there. She knew that exposing Nina's role in Drew's downfall was only the beginning. This battle wasn't just about Drew, it was about Michael, and it was about the future of Wiley and Amelia. Carly's fight for justice wasn't confined to the courtroom, it extended beyond the walls of that building, into the very fabric of their lives. The courtroom was just the stage, and Carly was determined to make sure that Nina's efforts to destroy her family would be stopped, no matter the cost. As the confrontation raged on, Carly's mind raced, looking for every possible angle, every opportunity to push Nina further into the corner. The tension escalated, with every passing moment intensifying the sense of impending doom for Nina. Carly's victory seemed all but assured as Nina, increasingly desperate, made one last attempt to salvage her crumbling position. But Carly wasn't fooled. She saw through Nina's every move, every lie, and she wasn't backing down. When the dust finally settled, Carly emerged victorious. The evidence she had presented was undeniable, and Nina's empire of lies had been brought to the ground. The weight of the battle had taken its toll, but Carly stood firm, knowing that she had done what was necessary to protect her family. Drew was out of the picture, Michael's chances of winning custody were strengthened, and Nina's manipulative schemes were exposed for all to see. Carly had won this round, but she knew the fight was far from over. As the dust settled in the courtroom and Carly looked around at the wreckage of Nina's carefully constructed world, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was just the beginning of her fight to protect the ones she loved, and she would stop at nothing to see that justice was served. The tension between Carly and Nina had reached a breaking point, and the courtroom was the stage for the latest chapter in their intense rivalry. For years, the two women had danced around their mutual disdain for one another, at times putting their differences aside for the sake of their families, but this time was different. This time, there was no room for diplomacy, no compromise to be made. The fight for custody of Wiley and Amelia had become a war where every action, every word, had the potential to destroy everything both women had worked for. Carly's emotions were running high as she stood before Nina, each accusation she hurled at her adversary carrying the weight of years of resentment and betrayal. Carly wasn't just fighting for the children she loved, she was fighting for justice, for her family's future, and most importantly, for Michael's right to be the father his children needed. The courtroom was charged with energy, every word spoken seeming to escalate the confrontation. Carly, with her razor-sharp focus, had already gathered the necessary evidence to expose Nina's schemes. It wasn't just about Drew anymore. It was about the lies Nina had spun to undermine Michael's parental rights and the way she had orchestrated a series of events to create chaos in their lives. Carly had caught wind of the scheme and, armed with undeniable proof, was ready to destroy everything Nina had built. But Nina, determined to maintain control, was not about to give in so easily. She fired back with venom in her words, her anger fueling the fight even more. The battle had taken on a life of its own, and there was no turning back now. The emotional weight of the battle was starting to take its toll on both women. The verbal sparring escalated, each woman trying to one-up the other, the venom in their words like daggers, each one aimed to hurt and humiliate. Carly was relentless in her pursuit of justice, and Nina, backed into a corner, was becoming increasingly desperate. But it was in that desperation that Nina made her move. In a moment of blind fury, Nina grabbed a heavy object from the nearby table, her hand shaking as she clutched it tightly, her eyes burning with rage. She swung it at Carly with all the force she could muster, aiming to strike her down and end the fight once and for all. However, just as Nina's arm was about to descend, there was a sudden shift in the room. Jocelyn, Carly's daughter, had entered the courtroom. Jocelyn had been trained in the art of self-defense during her time with the WSB, and in an instant, she was at her mother's side, her presence a force of protection and authority. With swift precision, Jocelyn intercepted Nina's attack, grabbing her arm and twisting it away from Carly. The object that Nina had intended to strike Carly with fell harmlessly to the floor, and the threat was neutralized. Jocelyn's timing was impeccable, and her actions were a clear reminder that, when it came to her family, she would do anything to protect them. Carly, visibly shaken but unharmed, stood behind her daughter, the gratitude in her eyes evident as she realized that Jocelyn had saved her from serious harm. But the danger wasn't over. While the immediate threat had been stopped, the underlying tension between Carly and Nina remained. The courtroom may have quieted for a moment, but the battle was far from finished. Carly's mind raced, processing everything that had just happened. She knew that this confrontation was only a small part of the larger fight that lay ahead. And she knew Nina wouldn't back down so easily. If anything, the attack had only further ignited Nina's desire to destroy everything Carly had fought for. But Carly wasn't going to let that happen. She was stronger than ever now, and she was prepared to take the fight to whatever lengths necessary. The confrontation would continue, but it wasn't just the courtroom where the drama would unfold. At the nurses' ball, a social event meant to celebrate the best of Port Charles, Carly and Nina found themselves face to face once again. The atmosphere was far from celebratory as the two women found themselves at odds yet again. This time, it wasn't about Drew or the courtroom, it was about power, control, and pride. Nina, still seething with anger from the earlier confrontation, didn't waste any time in making her move. In front of everyone at the nurses' ball, she arrogantly declared that she would stop at nothing to make sure Michael lost custody of his children. Her words were laced with malice, and Carly could feel the full force of Nina's bitterness in every syllable. For Carly, hearing Nina's words was like a slap to the face. How dare Nina, who had caused so much harm, stand there and make such an audacious declaration? Carly's blood began to boil as she realized that this wasn't just about winning custody of the children, it was about Nina's obsessive desire to destroy Michael, to tear apart the family that Carly had worked so hard to build. Carly could no longer stand by and let Nina manipulate the situation. The anger that had been building inside of her finally burst forth, and she took a step toward Nina, her voice filled with righteous fury. "You won't get away with this," Carly said, her words cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. "You may think you can tear Michael apart, but you're wrong. You don't get to destroy my family. Not while I'm breathing." Carly's voice was strong, unwavering, and full of the kind of power that came from years of defending what she loved. She wasn't going to let Nina's lies stand any longer. Nina, however, didn't flinch. Her expression remained cold, her eyes narrowing as she retorted with a biting tone, "You can't protect him forever, Carly. The truth always comes out in the end." The challenge in Nina's voice was unmistakable, but Carly wasn't backing down. The battle had become personal, and there was no way she was going to let Nina have the last word. Carly knew the stakes had never been higher. Every word, every move, mattered now more than ever. She couldn't afford to lose. She couldn't afford to let Nina win. Not for herself, and certainly not for Michael and the children. The fight was only intensifying, and Carly was more determined than ever to ensure that Nina's schemes would fail. She would protect her family at all costs, no matter what it took. The nurses' ball may have been a night meant for celebration, but for Carly and Nina, it had become the latest battleground in a war neither woman was willing to lose. And Carly was more determined than ever to win. The tension in the courtroom reached an all-time high as Sasha walked in, her presence sending shockwaves through the room. The case had already become a battleground, with Carly fighting for the future of her grandchildren and Michael's right to raise them, but Sasha's entrance added a new, unpredictable layer to the already volatile situation. As the key witness, Sasha was about to unveil the truth, one that could potentially change the entire course of the trial. Sasha took her place on the stand, and the room fell silent, every eye on her. Carly could feel her heart pounding in her chest as Sasha began to speak, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Sasha's voice, though shaky at times, was clear as she revealed the shocking truth: she was carrying Michael's child. The news was met with gasps from the audience, and Carly's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that there were complications surrounding Michael's relationships and his connection to Sasha, but hearing it confirmed in front of the courtroom felt like a slap in the face. The revelation not only complicated Michael's relationship with Willow, but it also had serious implications for the custody case. Now, the dynamics of the trial had shifted completely. Sasha's words were more than just an admission. They were a bombshell that could potentially derail everything Carly had been working for. As the truth sank in, it was clear that Sasha's pregnancy was going to be a key factor in determining custody. If the child was truly Michael's, it would only add fuel to Nina's already fiery pursuit of custody, giving her more ammunition to tear apart the Corinthos family. Carly's mind raced as she processed the new information. She knew that Nina would seize on this development with glee, using it to further her own agenda and possibly discredit Michael as a suitable parent for Wiley and Amelia. Carly's protective instincts flared. She couldn't let that happen, not while she was still breathing. The room buzzed with energy as the lawyers scrambled to react to the bombshell Sasha had dropped. But Carly remained focused, her thoughts a blur of determination. She couldn't afford to let Sasha's testimony throw her off course. She had to stay strong, to stand her ground, and to keep fighting for her family. Every ounce of Carly's energy was now directed toward ensuring that the truth wouldn't be used against Michael and his children. She knew that the stakes had never been higher, and she wasn't going to back down. Despite the chaos that Sasha's revelation had caused, Carly's resolve only grew stronger. She was determined to make sure that the custody of Wiley and Amelia was never put in jeopardy. It didn't matter how much Nina tried to manipulate the situation or how many obstacles came their way. Carly's commitment to protecting her family was unwavering, and she would stop at nothing to ensure that they were safe. But as the trial continued, Carly realized that it wasn't just the courtroom drama she had to contend with. Nina, ever the schemer, was working behind the scenes to capitalize on every detail, twisting the truth and manipulating events to suit her own needs. Carly had seen this before. Nina was a master of playing people against one another, and she wasn't about to let her get away with it this time. Every move Nina made only strengthened Carly's resolve to keep fighting. For Carly, the battle was no longer just about the children. It was about ensuring that Nina's underhanded tactics were exposed for everyone to see. She wasn't just protecting her family, she was defending what was right. And as Sasha's testimony continued to unfold, Carly knew that the battle was far from over. But with every word Sasha spoke, Carly's determination grew. The stakes had never been so high, and Carly's commitment to fighting for her grandchildren's future had never been clearer. In the moments after Sasha's revelation, Carly felt the weight of the trial settle on her shoulders. But despite the complexities that now clouded the situation, she didn't waver. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the courtroom on her, and the pressure to deliver a victory for her family weighed heavily on her. Yet, she wasn't ready to back down. She would push forward with everything she had, using every tool at her disposal to protect Michael, his children, and her grandchildren. Carly's love for her family was a force to be reckoned with, and there was nothing Nina, or anyone else, could do to stop her. With the trial continuing, Carly knew that every decision, every move she made, would have to be strategic. It wasn't just about winning the case, it was about ensuring that Nina's manipulations were brought to light and that the future of her family was secure. As the legal battle raged on, Carly held her ground, never once losing sight of her ultimate goal: to protect the children she loved and to thwart Nina's evil plans once and for all. Even as the odds seemed to be stacked against her, Carly refused to give up. She would keep fighting. And no matter how difficult the road ahead became, Carly knew that she would do whatever it took to secure a future for her family, one free from the deceit and corruption that Nina was trying to impose. The fight was far from over, but Carly's resolve had never been stronger.